There's this thing that happens when you get back from vacation. Someone asks you, how was it? And you give them a simple answer, probably one sentence. It was amazing. And that answer has almost nothing to do with how the trip actually went. And to be clear, that's not you being lazy. That's just like how your brain remembers things. So there's a psychological principle called the peak end rule. It was discovered by Daniel Kahneman. When you look back on any experience, your brain doesn't average out the whole thing. It doesn't take every moment, add them up, and divide. Instead, it basically looks at two things. What was the most intense moment, the peak, and how did it end? That's it. That's how your brain writes the whole experience. Everything in between gets blurred out essentially. But here's where it gets interesting. The duration of an event barely even registers. It doesn't even matter. This is something he called duration neglect, the idea that a longer experience isn't remembered as better or worse just because it lasted longer. And there's actually a study that he did that proved this. So Kahneman had people put their hands in really cold water, like 40 degrees Fahrenheit, for 60 seconds. So that was the first trial. Then in a second trial, they kept their hands in the water for 90 seconds. But in the last 30 seconds of the 90 seconds, the temperature was raised slightly. It was still cold, but warmer. There was more total pain. Their water was in cold water for longer. But when asked, people said they preferred the second trial more because it ended on a better note. Their hands were less cold at the end, even though they experienced more pain. This isn't just about lab stuff, though. You see this everywhere once you know what to look for. Think about a movie. The other day I went to a movie and it was 2 hours long. It was a pretty good movie the whole way through. I was thinking, this is a good movie, but the end was terrible. And naturally, while I was walking out of the theater, I looked over at my friend and I was like, that ending ruined the movie for me. Or we can think about another example. This case, let's think about a date, but kind of reverse the scenario. So the whole night could feel super awkward. You guys aren't connecting, but you have one really genuine funny moment or one really connection where you're like, we came from the same place, we have this thing in common, and then the date also ends well, right? Let's say you kiss at the end, you really feel that connection at the end. It doesn't matter if it was a 3-hour date and 2 hours something of it was really awkward and painful. That ending will make it a good date in your memory. This means the ending matters a lot. Whether it's like a first date, a job interview, a presentation, don't let the ending fizzle out because people don't remember the middle. They remember the peak moment and they remember the end. It's also important to know when you start something and something feels really difficult or something is unpleasant or hard, know that you won't remember that specific part of it. You can get through it. And as long as there's a good peak and it ends well, it doesn't matter if it was hard in the beginning, which is really helpful to actually commit to things longer. Another lens I want to look through just to kind of explain this, service companies that handle complaints and problems really well are actually remembered more fondly than companies where nothing went wrong at all. Let me say that again. Companies that had a problem and then they fixed it were rated more favorably than companies that nothing went wrong at all. Let me paint a picture. You go to a hotel and the room is super bad and you ask the people at the desk, yo, can we get a new room? And they put you in a really nice room. There's a good chance that you would be more fond of that experience than if you would have just gotten the good room in the first place. That is super, super powerful to know for business, but also just like, what? That's so like, I wouldn't have guessed that ever. Kahneman actually had something called the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self is you. You're living every moment in real time. The remembering self is also you, but it's the one that looks back on the story. The remembering self wins most of the time in terms of memory, how you remember it and how you think things are going. So it's worth thinking about. Are you designing your experiences for the moment or for the memory? Because those two things are not always the same. Thank you for watching.